Just over 1 year ago, my wife asked me if I'd like to try life as a vegan. She was going to do it anyway and just wanted my support. I said, "Are you absolutely nuts? We just bought a gigantic meat smoking grill to cook the pulled pork on that you love." She said, "I don't like the way the little pigs are treated." I said, "But it's Joe Rogan's favourite meat smoker." She said, "Did you know that pigs are as intelligent as our dogs?" I said, "Our dogs? That's not saying much, and that grill cost me thousands." She said, "I have made up my mind." I said, "The thing has Wi-Fi. It's got its own app." She said, "Studies show that women who eat plant-based experience a 54% increase in libido." I said, "It's going on eBay." This video is sponsored by Squarespace. So she was lying about the 54%, but it did get me to go vegan, and once I started, I thought, well, I might as well see the year through. On the 1st of June, a few days ago now, that year was up. And spoiler alert, I'm staying vegan. So this video is just going to cover off the questions that I get most often about this subject all in one go, because it's not really something that I talk about much in my regular videos. The reason for that, I'll explain in a bit. So I'm going to rattle through these. How easy was it to switch? How did it affect my health? How did it affect my sporting, my athletic performance? Does it make eating out an absolute nightmare? What is it like to be in a dietary minority? And given some of the downsides that I'm going to be talking about, why am I sticking with it? But before we dive into those, just quickly, what were my expectations at the start of all this? So last year, I thought that something dramatic would happen. Every "I ate vegan for a week" video that I saw on YouTube seemed to imply that dramatic change would occur. Some people suggested that anybody giving up meat and dairy would feel amazing. Your health, your strength, your speed, your endurance, your love of tie-dye t-shirts would all go through the roof. But then other people suggested that your body would shut down. Your new dreadlocks, any piercings that you'd acquired would just wither away if you weren't chewing through at least some flesh every now and then. So I went into this process quite excited that change was coming. I figured that whether I became an Olympian or drifted into a coma, either outcome would make good content for here. I'm not sure how I'd have made the video if I was in a coma. I wasn't really thinking it through at that point. I was still very distracted by the prospect of a 54% increase. Oh, and before we go any further, I don't care what other people eat, or rather I don't care enough to spend time or give much thought to what other people eat. The intention of this video is not to try and convert anybody to anything. As I say about everything you ever see on this channel, it's just here's what I'm doing. Hopefully you find it entertaining and motivating and are then able to go off and do what it is you want to do. So for example, in the same way that somebody might see me, I don't know, running and is then maybe motivated to go and get into competitive frisbee throwing, you might see me here giving thought and attention to what I eat and be motivated to start counting calories or watching your portion sizes as a full-on carnivore. That's cool. Entertainment and motivation, that is it. As long as what you're eating is legal, I hope you enjoy it. Obviously, if you're eating your grandmother or something, that's naughty, don't do that. And I know there might be some vegans that regard my "I don't care about others" attitude as inappropriate. Some of the more extreme ones might rather that I was using my weekends to stand outside Burger King giving out leaflets, harassing people on their way to get themselves a Whopper. Sorry, not for me. I eat the way I eat for me. I go to bed at night knowing that I am happy with what I have consumed, and that is good enough. Okay, how easy was it to switch? So I said there are a couple of reasons that I don't discuss being vegan on the channel very much. One is because on the rare occasions that I have, there'll always be somebody in the comments who says, "Vegan? That's it, I'm unsubscribing. I was motivated and entertained, and now I'm not." And morons make my head hurt. And two, being vegan is pretty boring in its contrast to not being vegan. There's just not a lot to say about the difference on a regular basis. So as an example, the switch was staggeringly simple and a bit boring. But, and this is a big but, I do understand that my own circumstances made it far simpler than it might have been for others. For example, my wife Jenna was the one primarily interested in going vegan in the first place. So not only was my partner on board, she was steering the ship. I didn't have anything to do. On the 1st of June last year, the cupboards were just suddenly filled up with food that I was allowed to eat. And she'd made the kids eat all my Ben & Jerry's ice cream before I could finish it off. And talking to the kids, 3 of mine live at home, but they're 15, 18, 21 years old. It means they pretty much look after themselves as far as cooking meals and food goes. So we simply have a section in the fridge for them, there's cupboards in the kitchen for them, and their stuff goes there. Now, I can only imagine how difficult it could be if you were trying to not eat meat and dairy while at the same time having your partner want to, or having to prepare family meals for people that don't want to eat your way. So having had an easy time of it regarding others in the house, yeah, in 2022 it is incredibly straightforward. Every supermarket has plentiful options and pretty much everything I used to eat can be easily replaced with a vegan alternative, or doesn't need replacing. Cheese is a good example of that. A lot of people say, you can't replace cheese. I agree, vegan cheese is gross, so I don't eat cheese. Solved. The biggest thing to remember that going onto a vegan diet is not really about eating different foods to normal people, it's about removing foods that you would normally eat. So just doing that part alone leaves you with a ton of stuff you can eat from before. People often say, I couldn't eat vegan food. Well, you could, because you do. There isn't really vegan food, there's just food. Some of it I won't eat, thanks. So for breakfast, I don't slice vegan banana on my vegan oats and have it with vegan peanut butter. I just have breakfast like I always did. Now, for sure, what you can do is start experimenting with foods that you could have eaten in the past but didn't, to bring some additional variety back into your meals that you might think you've lost. But that's a relatively short period of time you spend doing that. Within probably 2, maybe 3 months at most, we had played around with a whole variety of different sort of ingredients and stuff, and then didn't really give it much thought after that. Occasionally now somebody will say, hey, have you tried this new wacky thing? But that happens to everybody. As you go through life, you tend to try new foods. So yeah, bizarrely, the most boring aspect of the whole vegan experience was day-to-day diet. At this point, a year in, I simply give it zero thought. The best way to describe it is that before I went vegan, I never used to eat horse or dog or monkey. Some people do. I didn't. I never gave it much thought that I didn't. I mean, if I saw a monkey being eaten on TV or something, I suppose it might have registered that that wasn't something that I'd be eating, but beyond that, I wasn't walking around day to day thinking I'm not a monkey eater. In the same way now, I don't walk around thinking I'm a vegan. I just eat what I eat. How did it affect my health? It didn't. The linking of health with vegan is all about marketing. As I've said before in other videos, no one is a vegan for their health. Being vegan is a philosophy, it's not a diet. There is no one out there no longer wearing leather jackets for their health. But even if we ignore the fact that most of the time when someone says vegan, they really mean eating like a vegan, not being vegan, even then, the only people linking vegan and health are really food companies trying to sell you their stuff, or writers trying to make you read their stuff or watch their videos. Now, is it healthier to eat a bit less meat than the average person on a regular Western diet? Yeah, probably. Is it healthier to eat a bit more fruit and veg? I expect so. But that does not require you to be a vegan or even a vegetarian. Any diet that removes a giant chunk of options, which vegan does, can't be more healthy. It's like taking 30% of a mechanic's tools away from him and saying, can I still fix your car? Well, probably, but there won't be a better mechanic just because a lot of their gear is missing. That would make no sense at all. The healthiest diet, forget the environment, forget the cute little animals, just think about the person who is eating this thing. The healthiest diet for any individual imaginable is one where they are happy and able to eat everything, but only eat what's good for them. You want a mechanic to do the best job for you, they need to have every tool possible and then use the ones appropriate. So, does that mean that vegan is unhealthy? Let's stick with the mechanic analogy. Most people have most tools available to them, but then choose to simply smash themselves in the face every day with a hammer. That is the norm, as evidenced by every obesity, diabetes, heart disease statistic out there. Now, our vegan mechanic has less tools available, but if he's sensible, can probably still do almost as good a job as if he had all of them. He can certainly be a better mechanic than the one with everything at his disposal but the hammer fixation. That vegan mechanic most of the time is me. I'm getting the job of feeding myself done to a pretty high standard despite not having every tool, and certainly to a far higher standard than many people who do have all the tools. So does that follow that people with all the tools, not the vegans, could eat better than the healthiest vegan if they wanted? Yeah, I think they could. I think if I added back some bits and pieces, lean white meat, fish, eggs maybe, I could take my diet from really, really good to almost perfect. But I'm happy with really, really good. As such, it's only really a conversation I ever get into if I meet someone who is eating almost perfectly. I'll happily have a chat with that person about diet and possible shortcomings in mine. Is pea protein better than whey protein, or is soy a bad thing? Those sort of things. I'm happy to debate those points. I find it a really interesting subject. What I'm less inclined to do though is, despite the opportunity presenting itself on a more regular basis, get into a debate about my dietary health with somebody overweight whose only exercise is getting themselves out of a chair. I say I'm less inclined to get into a debate about it. I'm actually happy to get into a debate about it, but normally it goes something like them saying, oh, you're a vegan? No meat? What's wrong with you? Can't be good for you. And me saying, well, it's better for me than your obesity, you big tub of lard. But then everyone else gets very kind of, oh, you've altered the mood, can't we get along? It's Christmas. Flip side, can you eat unhealthy as a vegan? Oh, good God, yes. Every single food item that is easily overconsumed to your detriment that I can't eat as a vegan will have an alternative. In the case of donuts, a better alternative. The Donut Time Vegan Hasselhoff is a work of art, and if I wanted to have plant-based Whoppers and non-dairy Ben & Jerry's 24/7, I could easily do so. I've had 10,000 calorie cheat days as a vegan, no problem. Oh, and I should add, there are vitamins, there are nutrients, there are minerals that are beneficial to the body that are more easily obtained from meat and dairy. So if you are vegan, looking to get as close as perfect as possible on your diet, you need to supplement with those. But if you exercise hard, if you train often, you probably supplement with various things anyway, vegan or not. So I start every day, for example, with a green shake, stuffed with vitamins and minerals. I take a B12 supplement, I take plant-based omega supplements, I boost my protein intake with essential amino acids. Really nothing actually that particularly exciting and pretty similar to the supplementation that I was taking before I went vegan anyway, with stuff like creatine, beta-alanine, protein shakes obviously. I was adding all that stuff to my diet before and still do. So again, when people say you have to take all sorts of different supplements, I take a couple more than I used to, that is it. And don't forget, this is to take me from a good diet to a very good diet that suits all the training I do. Right, cute animals on hold, break from the main video. I mentioned the supplements I take. People often ask, where do I get mine from? That information, along with details on loads of stuff I use for my training, including some discount codes here and there, is all on my website, which was created using this video's sponsor, Squarespace. They are this channel's most regular sponsor, which I am very happy about because I've always said from the very start, if I'm going to talk about someone else's product, I want it to be something that I use, I enjoy using, and would recommend to others. Squarespace is all those things. So if you've not already done so, go visit my own site as an example of what somebody who has no idea what they're doing can do very easily. And having a website is great. I used to get so many questions about what events I'm doing in the future, what gear do I use, where do I get my trainers, stuff like that. It's all on the website now, and because it's so easy for us to edit things and add things and grow the information on there, stuff gets added all the time. Somebody the other day asked about the stuff I use for all this, for filming the videos. So there's now a little section on there for YouTube. So yeah, super happy to recommend them. If you need a website, go look at Squarespace. You pick a template from them, you tailor it to look the way you want it to. It can be as expansive and complicated as you want it to be. Like all the best gear that I use, it can do way more than what I'm currently using it for. So for example, when I finally get around to starting my blog, I can do that on there if I want to. I can do e-commerce stuff with them, they're all sorted for that. I can shift my domain stuff over to them, all covered. So there you go. Will it make you fit? Will it make you healthy? No, but it will get you a very easy to set up and still very cool website. The only annoying thing is that had I known how easy it was, I would probably have had one set up a long time ago. I'd always just assumed it was far too complicated. In fact, I was waiting for my kids to get old and clever enough that I could pay them to set one up for me. And now they are, and I don't need them to. So thank you, Squarespace. Result. Visit squarespace.com for a free trial. When you want to launch your own site, go to squarespace.com/MarkLewis and get yourself 10% off. Okay, back to the cute little animals. How did it affect my sporting and athletic performance? So if we separate health from pure sports performance, any change on that side, it is hard to say. And because it's hard to say, the answer has got to be really nothing obvious. I know there's plenty of top sports people out there that have said going plant-based has been the difference for them between success and failure. I haven't noticed that. But then at the very top of any sport, the difference between first and nobody is tiny. If anything gives you a 1% edge, could be good enough to get you on the podium. For them, it might work that way. For me, 1% edge in my world, I mean, this is my last podium. Did a 10K at my local duck pond. Does the odd 1% matter to me? No. I gained more in that race by wearing grippy trail shoes that didn't slip about in the duck shit than I ever gained from my diet. Now I am at an improved level of physical performance now compared to where I have been in the past, but that improvement is really only consistent with what I would have expected anyway, given my performance trajectory over the years. Basically, when I started working out in my mid-30s, I had massive improvements really quickly because I was starting from such a crazy low point. But then that started to taper off and never really leveled out. So for the last few years, I've got a tiny bit better at everything I do each time I do it. As I'm approaching 50, my expectation is that will actually start to flatten off completely, and in most areas of my performance, it will start to go down as old age becomes the primary dictator of my abilities. No idea when that will be. My guess is it will flatten off maybe in a couple of years' time, and I'll see decline in some areas from my mid-50s onwards. But whatever happens, I think stuff like my training, my stress levels, my sleep quality, those things will have a bigger impact on my performance than whether I eat oat milk or cow's milk. Does it make eating out a nightmare? I've included this one because it's probably the one that I get asked the most. People just assume that it's impossible to obtain food once I set foot outside my front door. Again, maybe I'm lucky in that I went vegan at a time when options are just plentiful compared to in the past, but I've not had any problems with it at all. I also benefit from the fact that I'm very happy to flick a switch in my head from sort of food as entertainment to food as food. So if I want to be entertained by my eating experience, it is easy to do. We've been to some amazing vegan, some plant-based restaurants and eaten food as delicious as any meat dishes I've ever had in Michelin-star restaurants over the years. And the options come all the way down to takeaways now. Every fast food place has a plant-based alternative. I've eaten plenty of Burger King vegan Whoppers and plant-based Big Macs. No issues with those at all. They tick that sort of fast food box for me just fine. So food for fun, straightforward. If you have access to Google, you can spell vegan food, you're sorted. Where I can see people might think there is a bit of a problem and limited options is sometimes when we get invited out for a meal by somebody else and they pick the venue. Then we may end up somewhere that doesn't have quite as much choice.
Hello.
Everywhere will have something nowadays, but I've definitely been in some places with a limited menu and I'll just sort of default to the bean burger or something. And the people that have picked that place will then look at what I've chosen and will sometimes say, well, it must be a nightmare to eat out for you. And I could explain, well, not really. Last week we were out in London and it was the most amazing restaurant ever and I had an awesome time. You've just brought us to a shithole. But that's where I have to flick that little switch in my head. I don't mind eating a bean burger. I'm presuming that we're there for their company rather than the menu. So if the food's edible, I'm happy. It's the same when we go to visit friends or family at their home and they're cooking. They'll often say, oh, we've gone to great lengths to cater for your vegan needs. I say, why? Were you going to serve nothing but a bowl of meat and eggs otherwise? Give me a load of vegetables. I really don't care. Or give it completely. Let me know. I'll have a protein shake before I come. Serve me a banana. Basically, I don't ask anybody to go to any great lengths to cater for my needs. I actually tell them not to. So if they then choose to, that's cool, but then don't moan about what a hassle it is. I'd rather be given a banana than hear about how they spent 4 hours on the internet trying to see whether there was dairy in cauliflower. What's it like being in a dietary minority? For people with no intention of ever giving up meat and dairy, there does seem to sometimes be a perception that a vast number of people are doing so.
There are too many of them. What are we going to do?
For anybody that then does give up meat and dairy, there's an immediate realization that you are now very much in a minority. So this is genuinely quite an interesting one for me. I'm a white, heterosexual male, financially secure, living in the United Kingdom. So I've not spent much of my life inhabiting a minority group. Certainly not a minority group that encounters any sort of negative reaction from an opposing majority group. Now, I don't mean to suggest that me just choosing to not eat bacon in any way gives me a comparable insight into what it's like to be in a truly oppressed minority, but it does give me a tiny glimpse, because some people do seem to have a problem with people in a minority, so in my case vegan, that causes them to act in a way and communicate in a way that would only really be appropriate if the minority was actually the majority and in some way genuinely a threat to them. I was a teenager in the 80s, so I saw it all the time, whether it was the majority getting agitated about a minority's, whatever, sexuality, race, religion, whatever. It always struck me as a bit insecure on the part of the majority to get so wound up about the largely inconsequential to them activities of the minority. But I was never in the minority that was affected. There was nobody ever going around back then saying, oh, tall teenagers, what is it with you lot trying to take over with your tallness? No one ever had a problem with a little shop in my local town that just sold clothes for tall people. There's no one stood outside with a poster saying, outrageous, where's the shops for normal people? Regular height matters. So here's what happens now sometimes. I'll get a Facebook advert for a vegan sausage or something, and I'll flick down. In the comments, people will be saying, oh, this looks nice, going to be trying this, etc., etc. And then one person, there'll always be one person, will say, oh, this looks disgusting. I wouldn't eat this if you paid me. All vegans, you're malnourished. If you don't want to eat meat, why do you want food that looks like meat? Bacon, bacon, bacon. I just think, dude, why do you care? I mean, if vegans were adding something to their diet that you didn't think we should be adding, then I see the justification for the passion. If we ate toddlers, you could go on Facebook and say, it's outrageous. Toddlers have rights too. Don't eat them. Bacon, bacon, bacon. But all we're doing is not eating something. I don't think it has much impact on the majority. Sometimes I say veganism is taking over the supermarkets. It's everywhere. It's not though, is it really? Supermarkets aren't doing away with selling eggs to make way for more lentils. It just strikes me that whenever somebody feels impacted by what someone else is doing, and this applies to anything, if they just take a moment to think, does it really impact me? And then go on with their day, it might be a better world. I do it. I go on Instagram, I see some kid in the gym saying cardio sucks, and he's showing you how you should be doing your bicep curls to ensure maximum peak when you flex. And I think you're an idiot. How can a pointless additional quarter inch on your arm that's only appreciated by other 17-year-old gym bro morons be a higher priority than literally the cardiovascular system that stops you being dead? But I'm about to type it and I think, does it really impact me? No. And to be honest, it's better parenting if I speak to my kid over dinner rather than directly through his Instagram. Oh, and vegans don't want food that looks like actual meat. There is no soy-based whole hog roast, a giant plant-based pig for you to skewer over your barbecue. When we eat sausages and burgers that are plant-based, it's not because we like food that looks like meat, it's because those shapes fit easily into hot dog rolls and burger buns. That's why meat eaters turn their animals into those shapes in the first place. Carnivores, you don't own the right to a sausage shape. And so lastly, why am I staying vegan? If in itself it's not healthier, there is a degree of inconvenience about it, and I have to put up with people telling me I'm on the verge of malnourishment, why am I sticking with it? Actually, it's easy to explain. The downside of being vegan is, for me, in 2022, very, very small. Now, if there was nothing to counter that downside, I'd probably change. If there are 2 ways to drive to the shops and one is a fraction quicker, I'm going to go the quicker route, obviously. There has to be something going on for me to choose the longer path, even if it's almost the same. So what's going on with being a vegan that makes me go the long way? 3 things. Firstly, I like being a bit different. The older I've got, the more I've realised that the norm, the average, the typical is nothing anyone should aim for by default. Doing what most do, while it might be comforting to know you're not alone, is not always the best option. Sometimes it is the best option, so just being contrary for the sake of it is unwise. Most people live in houses, so saying to hell with that, I'm going to live in a tree, that is doing you no favours. But if you think you've spotted a way to do something that is an improvement for you, but few others are doing it, don't let that put you off. I get a sense of satisfaction from all sorts of things I do, from running in the rain and the dark when no one else is, to eating the way I do. I like that it's different. That doesn't need to make sense to you, it just needs to make me happy and not annoy anyone else. Secondly, as I've said, I give almost zero thought to what I eat. I just don't need to. On the odd occasion I need to go out of my way to accommodate my veganness, the reality is it's a negligible inconvenience. So given the personal satisfaction I get from eating the way I do, if all it takes to achieve that is negligible inconvenience, it's worth it for me. And lastly, and perhaps the biggest one, in the last year, I've realised just how hypocritical my attitudes to animals were when I eat meat. I would say I'm an animal lover, down with SeaWorld, free the dolphins, they're intelligent mammals, and then I'd eat a different intelligent mammal for my dinner, one that never even got to play with a hula hoop, let alone have his own swimming pool. Now, that was not a deliberate hypocrisy on my part, that was just me not thinking it through, which in a way was worse. It was laziness on my part. I don't actually have a problem, too big a problem, with deliberate hypocrisy. If someone says to me, I love eating these animals, keep them in a cage, kill them, stick them in a sandwich. But if I see a squirrel with a limp, I'm going to nurse it back to health, I'm going to call him Simon, and when I release it back into the wild, if he runs off and pauses to look back at me before scampering up a tree, it'll melt my heart. That I get. I just don't care that my attitude to animals depends on the animal for no good reason. This one cute, save it. This one, slice it up, I'm hungry. I wouldn't want to be acting in that way myself, but I understand when others do. My problem is that having stepped away from eating animals, it's left me able to see from the outside in how most people are acting in the way that I was, going through life just slightly oblivious to the inconsistencies in their own beliefs. That just doesn't make sense to me now. I was chatting with someone the other day. She said that she hated hunting. She started off talking about fox hunting and then we sort of veered off into people in the States that go bow hunting. I follow a couple of guys on Instagram. They're into their fitness and their running stuff, but they also bow hunt. In fact, Joe Rogan, famous for slapping his hunted meat on his expensive grill that has Wi-Fi and its own app. It's incredible. Anyway, the point was, while I largely agreed with her, I also pointed out that I don't think you can get too worked up about hunting while being, as she was, a huge fan of KFC and to hell with how they keep their chickens. But she didn't see that or want to see that. I tried to explain that personally, I'd rather be a wild animal that lives 99.9% of its life chilling in the forest until one day getting whacked by the guy off Fear Factor, which for a wild animal is probably not a bad way to go compared to being eaten by a bear or starving when you get sick and old. I'd rather be that than a factory farmed animal that spends its whole life in that system before getting killed, never having seen a tree, let alone a forest. Certainly never gets to meet Joe Rogan. She just said, yeah, but KFC tastes good, which is perfectly fine. It's a fine thing to think in isolation. But for me, if I was to come back into eating meat, I'd not be able to balance in my mind those conflicting beliefs. I just enjoy simple consistency. I love running in the countryside and seeing a fox, a deer, a sheep. I'm just thinking animals. I'm not thinking, oh, that one's cute, as long as it's not attacking babies in the Daily Mail. That one's cute, unless it's in a posh restaurant, then I'll eat it. That's a lamb chop. I don't have to think like that. I don't have to do any mental gymnastics. Here's a nice example. Recent news story. White van man got impatient because some ducklings were crossing the road, so he drove over 3 of them. Splat, splat, splat. Internet went bonkers. The police got involved. Oddly, when masked intruders tried to get into my house at 3 a.m. a couple of years ago, the police just said to me, lock your doors at night. I don't know why they didn't get involved with me here, but they did with the ducks. Maybe they were busy dealing with something else. Pigeon that got in a bar fight, who knows. Anyway, I want to be free to feel negatively about some dick that drives over ducks, just like most people do. But I'm not sure I'd be able to do that if I was also eating eggs, like most people do, from an industry that puts 40 million baby chickens in a wood chipper in the UK every year. That would either need those mental gymnastics or me pretending it's not a thing. Again, these are just my thoughts. If you're someone signing petitions on the one hand to save a 10-year-old donkey that needs airlifting out of Afghanistan, but then eating sheep before it makes 6 months old, that's cool. No desire to stop you. But I might use what you're doing to reconfirm to me that I'm doing something that I'm happy with. Equally, you are clearly free to use my attitudes to fuel your own passion for baby sheep and donkeys. As long as we're respectful of each other, that should be okay. As I said at the beginning, this is just what I do. I don't prescribe it to anybody else. It is not a recommendation. Okay, that is it. That explains where I am now at with what I eat and why. And so no more specifically vegan videos unless something dramatic happens. Maybe that elite sports performance or coma-inducing malnourishment just takes a while to kick in. If it happens, I'll update. But other than that, you could be a toddler eating hypocritical SeaWorld season ticket holder. You can relax and subscribe. You're not going to be told you're wrong in any of my regular videos. Obviously, if you don't do cardio, I'm going to highlight your shortcomings. Right, I am out of here. Oh, and if you're still wondering about that 54%, curious as to whether there was any increase, it's not saying I kept a spreadsheet on the monitor. Got an app for it. 27%, which was not bad. Made up for losing a bloody fortune on that grill.